Streaming audio test. One, two, three.
right. Good afternoon. Good Friday. Good home opener day. 1 day delayed. It is a pleasure to be here with you all on this 86th day of session. We are almost there, around the corner, and I just want to thank you for this being our 13th press conference of the year. So we missed it this morning because there was a great opening of CFG Bank Arena, which is an exciting investment happening with the Bruce Springsteen concert happening later today. But this was our 13th week in a row of doing this press gathering, and I think it's been really helpful to lay out where the Senate has been and where we are going. And now with 4 days left, I just want to sort of talk about where things generally stand. I'm incredibly thrilled to be joined by the Senate's leadership team. We have our Senate President Pro Tem, Malcolm Augustine, our Majority Leader, Senator Nancy King, our Caucus Chair, Senator Craig Zucker, and all 4 standing committee chairs, Senators Melanie Griffith, Will Smith, Brian Feldman, and Guy Gazzoni, who will be joining us in just a moment as he is finishing up a last-minute meeting as the last few days of session can be. I'm going to have a number of them address a few issues, but I just wanted to kind of round up where we are in the work so far with 4 days left. As we look forward and when we think back to where we were back in January, we laid out several priorities that the Senate would take on. We also noted that we were going to have to take on some issues that the Supreme Court handed to us around Bruin and the Dobbs decision. And we also knew that as the voters had approved the cannabis legalization, that we would have to be moving forward on a regulatory process. As we approach sine die, just a few days out in the end of the legislative session, I believe we've exceeded expectations, and I am incredibly proud of the work that the Senate has done because of those who are standing up on the stage with me and what they have done throughout the session. We've invested $8.78 billion in public education and an additional $900 million in the blueprint for future funding needs. We've set aside $200 million for transportation and set up the Transportation Revenues and Infrastructure Needs Commission, the TRAIN Commission. Thank you, Jody Sprinkle. We've also advanced our comprehensive behavioral health package by funding the Behavioral Health Hotline, 988, ensuring telehealth access, increasing access to behavioral health care through primary care providers. We've protected reproductive health care decisions and ensured privacy of these decisions in our reproductive rights package, understanding just how important it is for states like Maryland to protect a woman's right to choose. The Senate Executive Nominations Committee and the chair and vice chair have been successful in moving through 99.9% of the nominees that were put before us, of which there were 999. If I had to pick a theme, I'd say that the Senate has led and collaborated on all of the important issues for the betterment of the people of Maryland. We've worked closely with our House counterparts and the new administration and their staff. There were, of course, moments when the Senate had a different perspective on issues or pieces of legislation, and that's okay. We all remembered along the way that we're all focused on the same outcomes and same goals, and we are agreeable in our disagreements. And I think that proved throughout this session and will continue so in the next 4 days. I'm pleased that the governor's package of bills has largely gone through, not exactly as they were as introduced, but that's the point of the legislative process. They're all moving, and that's a real success for any administration. I think the overall story is that it's been a successful session despite a time of major transition at all levels of government. I believe we've set ourselves up in this first year of a term for success for the next 4 years. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Majority Leader, Senator Nancy King.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to add my 2 cents about the successful session we've had this year. We've accomplished much of our priorities for the Senate, and we did so with 10 new senators, new committee chairs, and new committee assignments. We collaborated with a new governor, and you know, I've been here a lot of years. I've been here with Republican governors and Democratic governors, and it doesn't matter. Every year is different. It's a whole new show every year, so it's always interesting. In the Senate chamber, we work to improve legislation in a bipartisan way to produce the most effective pieces of legislation. And again, I've been here, this is my 20th year. This, to me, is the most workable Senate that I have been with. Between both sides working together. I wish it was better, more news for the bipartisanship that we have. If you look at the number of bills that we pass, probably 99 or 98% of what we do is bipartisan. There's probably about 2% that we argue over, but that's usually what gets the most attention. The Senate led by working with the House to pass a budget with investments in public education, transportation, and behavioral health. And I am just so proud of the work that all of our members did, working with new committee assignments. And with that, I would like to turn this over to the chair of our caucus and subcommittee on the capital budget, Senator Craig Zucker.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Leader, colleagues. It's an honor to be here to talk about one of my favorite subjects, the capital budget of the state of Maryland. We've worked very closely with the administration as well as the House of Delegates, and I could tell you that House Bill 201, the capital budget of Maryland, is the biggest job creator and infrastructure bill that you'll see this session. We're pumping more than $2 billion into the local economy, helping out higher education institutions, our hospitals, $100 million for the FBI, and giving a lifeline to many nonprofits who were affected negatively because of the pandemic. We are well within our debt capacity, and this fall we expected the economy to be different, but we had a write down in our budget. But the Senate of Maryland, working with our colleagues, stepped up and knew that we were going to take a statewide approach. And this capital budget is that. It takes a statewide approach, whether you're in the Eastern Shore or Western Maryland. We were going to be investing in communities throughout the state. And that's what this budget reflects. It reflects where we view what Marylanders need, and it's reflected in the actions that we began taking today. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, the Senate President Pro Tem, Malcolm Augustine.
Thank you, Craig. It is really an honor to be here with you all today, and I am just so very proud to be a part of this team led by Senate President Bill Ferguson, who has really just led by example of, as you heard from Majority Leader, to make sure that we are all working together, being an inclusive team to better things for the people of the state of Maryland. And it has happened in our committees. In our committee, we've done very special things, and I think I'd just like to highlight a couple of those. I sit on the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee, led by Senator Feldman. A bill that is very important that we're working through is the offshore wind bill, for example. I mean, a huge bill where Maryland is going to be in the lead on offshore wind for the East Coast for certain, by investing in transmission lines out into the ocean, which we know will save money and provide renewable energy back for us into our state. And then also, of course, we also very, very proud of the work done at JPR with Senator Smith, his leadership, and just one thing. I mean, Senator President did mention it, but the work that they have been doing on gun control and keeping Marylanders safe is just really leading in the nation, which I'm really very, very grateful for. We also, of course, have got Senate Finance and Chair Griffith, who has had to work very hard on creating a framework for cannabis, which I think is very, very important. It's going to be something that we're going to work on going forward. But also, I think that the paid family leave that's going to be coming to the state of Maryland that they have put together is something that we can be very, very, very proud of. And I know that I'm very proud. And then, of course, with our Chair Gazzoni, who you heard mentioned earlier, the fact of something that I have worked on quite a bit, which is the first thing that came out of the Senate, which was 988 funding, which you heard, where we are concentrating on the behavioral health of the people of the state of Maryland, I think is just a real testament to us saying what our priorities are, and I'm just very pleased to be a part of the team. And I'll turn it right back to Senate President Ferguson.
Excellent. Any questions?
Ferguson, sort of a big picture question of the work of the Senate and the House as well. A lot of progressive issues moving forward, reproductive care, gun control, the extra money for the blueprint. Can you talk a little bit about that goal? And it seems like it's a lot smoother. You're not encumbered or slowed down by a Republican governor now. especially in comparison to other states where we're hearing, the reverse happening on these issues?
Look, I can only speak to the Senate in particular, although all of these leaders have been working across the chambers with their House counterparts and with the administration. I think the best example is the budget. The operating budget this year passed with unanimous support in the Senate. I think that is a testament to the work that the Senate leadership has done to bring every voice to the table to say that even though we may not agree in one particular area, we can agree on the vast majority of others. And so I think that that's a testament that despite whether it's a Republican governor or a Democratic governor, the Senate stays the same. We are going to work and make sure that every voice is incorporated. And so I think that the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding shows a unanimous vote on the budget, and it's a testament to the leadership of our budget committee, but each one of these leaders has demonstrated it in every way on major pieces of legislation this year.
But do you think some of the policy issues that you advanced this year had a smoother path forward than perhaps in past years?
I don't know if I would say no. I think that this year has been, we've prioritized issues. We've really, we started a little bit slower because it's a first term of a 4-year term with a new governor, a new attorney general, a new comptroller across the board. And so I think that we were able to prioritize the things that mattered the most. Some issues didn't make it across and probably won't make it across in the last few days, but that's expected, and it's a 4-year term. And so we'll be back 9 months from now to take it up again.
I know that yesterday, the budgeting process we saw a look at the Baltimore City budget for this upcoming budget year, and the mayor was concerned about funding for the blueprint. The estimate, they were planning to spend $12 million. In addition, now is $79 million. He said that he's in talks about changing the funding formula moving forward. Is that something that you're talking with local leaders about, perhaps for next session?
Yeah, and I'll ask our chair of budget and tax to join me on this one. I will say the one major change was the way that we calculate free and reduced lunch meals, and that has had a significant impact on the way that our education funding formula has worked, because we incorporated a new way of accounting for free and reduced income qualified that does relate to the pandemic. And so there are some impacts that were unanticipated as a result of this new calculation. Those are certainly things that we're going to be talking about over the interim to make sure that the formula of today represents where we expected it to be when it was passed. But with that, let me hand it over.
Well, I mean, just simply the fundamentals of the blueprint are there. They're going to be there. We're going to have to live up to them and work with our locals to do that. There will be unexpected changes that come along, and that's just the nature of legislation, the nature of policy, but we'll work through that. We'll work cooperatively, but at the end of the day, we've got to get the job done.
Are you open to changing the funding formula for locals who are worried that they can't continue to tap their reserves moving forward?
I think we're always back every year, and I think we're always open to make sure if the facts and data are there, we will address it. Certainly we know on May 1st when the public emergency, when the emergency is expired, there will be a change in calculations, and Medicaid will have a redetermination, and we'll see what the roles look like with the changes in qualifications. But that's why we have our interim committees, and I'm confident we'll act as we appropriately do, putting money away for future costs and making sure we invest in our priorities.
I wanted to ask about setting up the framework for cannabis. Were there lessons learned from the state setting up medical cannabis, as well as lessons learned from other states as you put together the program?
Sure, thank you so much for that question, and we just happen to have the Senate sponsor of the bill here with me, so I'll invite Chair Feldman to chime in if I leave something out. But absolutely, during this process, as you all know, we had legislation that passed last session that Chair Feldman was also very involved with, as was the entire chamber, that led to the vote by the voters. And throughout that process, we have been engaging input from stakeholders across the country, from experts in this subject matter. We've been talking with our counterparts in other states saying, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? What do you wish you had known when you set up your program? Throughout the interim, we've been working on a joint committee with our colleagues in the House on setting up this framework, and we've all taken in the information that's available from other states and some experiences that we've had here. We have great expertise here in Maryland with our medicinal cannabis program and have had tremendous success. So all of those ingredients, if you will, have been rolled into what now is our cannabis framework. Did you guys get that?
Chair Griffith, I actually have a question for you as well. So earlier today, 7 people were arrested outside of the State House. I know some of you had to see them because they were blocking your entrance into the State House. And they were advocating for the Time to Care Act, which I know is currently in finance. Is there any hope that within the next 3 to 4 days before sine die, it'll enter the floor? Do you have any particular concerns about it moving forward?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I kind of anticipated it. And the Access to Care Act is a bill that the committee has had before us throughout the session. When the bill was introduced, we took a look at the bill, and we also took a look at a joint chairman's report that was introduced that came from a 2021 review of healthcare and how we might address the healthcare needs of the uninsured. A big part of the population, and Maryland has been a tremendous leader in addressing healthcare needs of our uninsured. A big part of the Access to Care Act deals with how we will respond to the healthcare needs of the immigrant community in this state. And as someone who's worked in hospitals, public health, federally qualified health centers, most of you know I'm a social worker by training, this has been an issue of deep concern. One of the reasons that we slowed down, and you all will remember at the beginning of session, we promised that we were going to proceed with caution with legislation, manage expectations. And so that's what we did with this session is we looked at the legislation we had in front of us. We had a bill, Senate Bill 806, that studied not just the health care needs of the uninsured in Maryland, but specifically asked the state to review how we respond to the health care needs of our uninsured immigrant population. And so the bill that was before us, House Bill 588, was one possible solution to meet the needs of a percentage of that population. Many of our folks, even that are uninsured that are not from the immigrant population, find that the health benefit exchange might not be the best way to address their health care needs. So many Maryland residents have their health care needs met through public health, through federally qualified health centers, by utilizing the resources we have in place. We've also put a tremendous amount of funding, both through the Blueprint and through the state's investment in our community health resource communities. So we start with primary and preventive care and work through the whole healthcare continuum. What you have is a group of people who have identified a solution to a part of the problem. And I think that because of their passion and their desire to see the healthcare needs met, they don't necessarily understand why we want to look at all of the options available to us. We think it's important to consider all of the options because no matter what solution is chosen, it's going to require an investment from the state. We want to make sure we're meeting the needs of the most vulnerable and getting the most out of the investments the state makes. We don't want to be looking back saying, we started a process, it wasn't the best solution to meet the healthcare needs of the most vulnerable. Wish we'd have studied it and waited for the results of the study before we moved ahead. So I think what you see is a lot of passion from people who believe this is the silver bullet, this is the answer, and we'd like to get the information back from the study that we passed in Senate Bill 806.
Chairman Smith, perhaps, could you give us an update on how things are going with the gun legislation? Seems like there are a lot of moving parts.
Yes, well, good afternoon, everyone. There are 3 bills before the committee, or before the General Assembly right now, 2 of which are, well, actually one is now being debated on the House floor, Senate Bill 1. And we had a debate on House Bill 824, which deals with permitting. And also we've slid in Ivan Bates / Senator McRae's legislation into that bill. And then you have safe storage law. So we're in receipt of the safe storage law back in the Senate. We'll look to put that back on the floor this afternoon or tonight, or early Monday morning, and that's it. We got 3 pieces of legislation moving. One deals with safe storage, one deals with where carry permit, the permitting process, and one deals with primarily with sensitive locations.
Could you tell us like what those sensitive locations would be and how they will be defined?
Well, sure. I mean, there are sensitive locations defined in statute now, but we've incorporated things like polling locations, hospitals, and those like school playgrounds. And so that debate is now taking place on the House floor. We'll see what it looks like when it gets back over here, but that's the type of discussion we're talking about, public places where people congregate that they wouldn't necessarily want a firearm present.
This will be, I'm assuming, a bill resolved on Monday on sine die?
That's our hope.
Senator Smith, when you say you slid Ivan Bates' proposal into was it changed at all? Was it as was?
No, it is as was. So we've, obviously we had a lengthy Senate committee debate on that issue, and we put it into there last night. So it's on the Senate floor right now on third reader.
Chairman Smith, have you talked with the House about that provision, adding the base provision? Is this something House Judiciary?
Yes, we've been in constant contact throughout this process, and so they know it's coming, and I know the debate will continue on until Monday.
We spoke with some Republicans earlier today. They've been pretty much all session pushing for some of the same pieces of legislation targeting anti-crime bills, tough on crime plans, and we've heard them for the last couple of years. They said today that they're looking for them because they're tied up in committee. What's your message to the Republicans who argue that Democrats just simply aren't getting tough on crime this session?
No, my message is that public safety is our #1 priority, and we've put forth legislation that I think will make every Marylander safer. There's still more coming. We're still, in 15 minutes, we're going back into committee to deal with some more of those issues that deal with gun violence, not only in Baltimore City, but throughout the state of Maryland. So public safety is and always has been our #1 priority.
Mr. President, could you tell us how you're envisioning sine die? What will be the issues that will take most focus, that are most prioritized?
I think it'll be working through a lot of the differences between the chambers in highlighted in, pieces of legislation. So the firearms legislation, the attacking violence legislation, I think those are going to be the places where we're going to spend a lot of time dealing with justice issues. But for the most part, it'll be ironing out differences between the chambers. I don't think we'll see a lot of quick movement of new ideas. One thing that did come up, and I don't know if there's any additions, but the 529 plan, which has garnered a lot of attention, is on the floor today. It's one of those things that there's been a lot of work really trying to think through what is the best framework for the Treasurer to take over on this issue. We didn't have much debate in the Senate because I think there was a lot of conversation over the last 80 days about what's the best way forward. And so I would be surprised if there are any dissenting votes on that bill, because there's been just a lot of work done to set the Treasurer up for success in dealing with what is a very hard issue. Similarly with the thoroughbred industry, I don't suspect there will be much debate, because there's just been a lot of great work done to have conversations about what are the unintended consequences, how can we work through this. I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do. And so Monday will really be about closing up loose ends.
And probably recreational marijuana as well on Monday?
Cannabis, I imagine, will be on Monday. Madam Chair?
Maybe sooner.
Maybe sooner. Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
It sounds like a lot. Are you concerned that maybe not all of it will happen?
I feel good. I feel good with where we are. Don't want to guarantee anything, but I feel good with where we are.
You do one more, guys. You've taken on, as a whole legislature, a lot of controversial topics this year. I know that the Child Victims Act has already had people in opposition say that they plan to try it in court. I'm anticipating similar things will be happening with the firearms legislation in regard to Bruin. What do the next 9 months look like?
Look, we can only do the best we can with the information that we have. And I feel incredibly confident in our Attorney General and the advice that we receive from the Attorney General. I feel incredibly confident by these leaders who take in all of the information from the various sides. We can't prevent somebody from filing a lawsuit. But I feel very confident in the work that we've done. And I think that Marylanders should be proud of the product that we're able to put out.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you all. Thank you.